morning, Marco Island. This is the Good Morning Marco podcast, Marco Island's first, best, and only podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Sullivan.
And I'm Jordan Kraley.
And today we have a super special guest.
Terri Hasdorff.
Terri, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. We have been... one of my biggest prides on Good Morning Marco is that 2 years ago when we were in, I believe it was our 7th episode, we started this this trend. We interviewed every single person who ran for Marco Island City Council, and ever since then, I have been sending out emails and making requests and being like, I want to interview someone either running for a national office or state office or someone actually in that position. And today, what are we here interviewing you for?
Well, I am running for Congress to represent Florida's 22nd District, which includes Marco Island.
Marco Island. So, if all goes according to your plan, you will be our Congresswoman in a few short months.
Absolutely.
So, go ahead and give us a little bit of your elevator pitch, if you have the length of an elevator ride, to tell someone who you are, what you're about, why you're running. Go ahead and tell us now.
Thanks, Ryan. Absolutely. So, I am running for Congress to represent this district. My why that everybody always wants to know, why are you running to, go and represent people in Congress? Well, we are in a place right now in our country where we are losing our freedom. Florida is the free state. I mean, this is a state that stands for that. When I was in high school, I was asked to go on an exchange program with the People to People Initiative. And I was one of 40 high school students who was chosen. We traveled to 7 different cities. I was there for 3 long weeks. And after seeing firsthand what communism and socialism do to people, I literally came back with such a profound impact. We landed at John F. Kennedy Airport, and I literally got down on my hands and knees and kissed the ground. Yeah. And so now when I see these Democratic Socialist of America candidates being endorsed left and right and running for office and getting elected, and I see the rise of socialism taking hold in our country, and I see our freedoms being taken away more and more, and all of the things that are making America less of what makes America what it is. Mm-hmm. The American dream is slipping away. A lot of our young people are feeling like they can't even access the American dream anymore. Yeah. I can't stand by and watch that any longer from the sidelines. I felt like I had to get in. I had to get involved. I know how to get things done in Washington, and I want to put those skills to use to help this district and to serve our country.
Right. You mentioned that you know how to get things done in Washington. You have former experience in Washington. What is that experience, and how are you going to be taking that into your hopeful congressional election? You know what I mean.
Absolutely.
Being Congresswoman.
So I worked on Capitol Hill for 6 years, and I was a congressional staffer. I worked with the House Leadership Office. I worked with the first Chief Administrative Officer for the U.S. House of Representatives. My first boss on Capitol Hill was actually Speaker Newt Gingrich.
Yes.
Speaker Gingrich brought my boss and I in to bring business-minded reforms to the U.S. House of Representatives. We were able to look for ways to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. We conducted an independent audit. First time that had been done in decades. Yeah. And we put reforms in place that saved the taxpayers over $5.5 billion to date.
Wow.
So I know how to do a little bit of the Doge government reform, swamp draining, and I want to do more of that. I think, affordability is a major issue that I keep hearing a lot about right now. Well, that starts with government reform, and that's something I have an expertise in. I've also worked with a lot of different folks on the Hill who are, like the Pro-Life Caucus, the Freedom Caucus. Andy Harris, who's the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, is a personal friend. So that's something I'm very excited about, working with those folks to push for conservative values and to fight for, what makes our hardworking Florida families have what they need to be able to live their lives the way they want to live them.
Wonderful.
I love it. I'm going to pause real quick.
Sure.
You have a little bit of like the flower in your hair, and as a girl, I know you want to fix that.
Thank you, love.
Of course. So to kind of go a little bit more into your qualifications for this, you, correct me if I'm wrong, also ran for Congress in Alabama?
I did. I ran in 2020 in Alabama.
Perfect. And then what have you learned from that you want to apply to Florida specifically, and to not necessarily leave one coast out of the district?
Alabama and Florida are very similar in that there are a lot of hardworking families who are doing the very best that they can, but sometimes they need the government to make sure that it's doing what it needs to do to set them up for success.
Right.
And as I've traveled across this district, you have a lot of farmers, which is similar to Alabama. You have a lot of people who are, just focused on raising their families and worried about education, worried about healthcare. You've got a lot of seniors and retirees. So that's where there's a lot in common. Where there's things that are not in common, you have Lake Okeechobee in this district. You have the Florida Everglades partially in this district. So water issues are a pretty major concern for a lot of people here, making sure that the Everglades stay pristine and beautiful, which is absolutely something that I'm committed to. I learned from that first race that it's all about getting out and meeting people, and it's the grassroots push that can make the difference. A lot of people try to come in and buy a race, and I don't believe in that. I think the people need to decide who's going to represent them, because the people ultimately are going to be the ones who that representative needs to serve. And how can you serve somebody that you don't even really get to know when you're trying to run for that office?
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you did also mention about how this district is so unique, which, I mean, this is probably one of the most unique districts around because of the recent redistricting. So we spread now for FL22 from Marco Island all the way to like Parkland and Weston.
Weston.
Right? Yeah. How does your approach, because this is now an extraordinarily diverse district.
It is.
Where it used to be like, we're the Southwest Florida coastal elites over here. How does that make running this campaign different than you may have initially thought to run it?
It is a massive district. I've actually been told this district is larger than the state of Connecticut. I haven't verified that yet, but I wouldn't be surprised. I spend a lot of time in my car going back and forth across Alligator.
Rhode Island. You can say that for sure.
Yes, Alligator Alley. So, the fact that you've got so much farmland in between these two coasts, and you are serving this, these two very massive population centers on either side that are both very different from each other. You've got, the Naples, Marco Island area, which is much more conservative. You've got the other coast, which is a little bit more liberal leaning. You've got part of what was Debbie Wasserman Schultz's old district there. So, making sure that we don't lose this seat in particular is very important, because this is now an R+4, which this used to be a very deep red district, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now that they've redrawn these lines, this makes this, according to the Cook's report, an R+4. Anything below an R+9 can be flipped back.
Okay.
And we don't want to see this district go Democratic. The DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, which is the Democratic machine, has targeted this district in particular to make it a Democrat district. So they are dumping a lot of money into this district. And because of the complexity of this district, and because it's so diverse, as you wisely said, campaigning here is not easy.
Right.
So you really have to be careful about who you're putting up to make sure that they can survive and get through the general, and that they're going to be skilled at being able to serve all the diverse needs that are coming into play with a district like this.
Right. I think that this area is very focused on the primary more than anything, because we've always only ever had to be worried about the primary, because as goes Marco and Naples, so goes the rest of the district. Now it's a little bit more of a challenge. So I think that there are plenty. We have seven
candidates,
Republican candidates, and there are 2 on the Democratic side. Is that correct?
2 Democrats, 7 Republicans.
With I believe Pia Dandia is the front runner for the Democratic side. What do you think puts you at a specific advantage to be able to beat, whether it be Pia Dandia or whether it be the other individual whose name is
Keisha Early.
Keisha Early. Okay.
Yep.
You know what you're talking about. So but what puts you at an advantage to be able to win in the general rather than you think some of your opponents?
Well, I don't have the baggage my opponents have. And I'll just tell you straight up, if the Republicans are finding out about this baggage, the Democrats will too, and they will be using that against any opponent that you put forward. Not only that, but I'm the only candidate in this race who actually has experience working as a congressional staffer and is ready to hit the ground running day one.
Yeah.
I have had years of working in policy and understanding where the levers are, what the appropriations process is like, how to move a bill from start to finish. That's a very complicated process.
Oh, yeah.
There are bills that I worked on that have literally been signed into law. That is not easy to achieve. So I know how that can impact a district like this. That's what makes me a candidate who can do this and carry it through to the finish line.
If you're elected, what is something that people in Marco Island could say, Terri did that. Thank you, Terri. Like, this is the one thing that Marco Island people specifically could probably
I'll tell
thank
you
for.
Thank you for that question. You got me excited. I just wanted to answer it. I'll tell you straight up what I'm going to do right off the bat is I'm going to put a district office in Marco Island. I've heard from people all over Marco that they have felt very forgotten and left out and kind of overlooked.
Yeah.
Because
I can say personally that I have emailed our current representative's office 12 times. And I've gotten one response from one staffer.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is not the way it's supposed to work, Brian.
It's supposed to be representing. So.
Yeah. So having been a congressional staffer and having worked on Capitol Hill for 6 years, I know what constituent services are supposed to look like. And I know when they're being done with best practices, and I know when they're not. So I am committing right now, I will put a district office in Marco Island, and I will make sure that district staff is well trained and knows how to handle the needs that Marco Island and the other parts of this district have.
All right. So Florida is very unique when it comes to the national questions because Florida, ever since 2000, has been leaning ever stronger red. But some more traditional left values are incredibly important in Florida, namely the environment. Because nationally speaking, the environment is always sort of seen more as a left-leaning ideal. Going into national politics, where do you think that leaves your whole stance on, let's say, of course, you've mentioned water being incredibly important, but also keeping the Everglades safe, and a lot of our natural resources and endangered species that we have in Florida. I think there's more endangered species in the state of Florida than there are anywhere else in at least the continual U.S. And then AI data centers, all those sort of things. Where is somewhere that, if you don't necessarily totally agree with the current Republican Party, what's your specific stance on it?
So I think there always needs to be common sense and a balanced approach to anything. Obviously, protecting the wildlife, protecting the Everglades. This is an incredible area. I believe it's the largest ecological wilderness in the United States. The Everglades is so special.
Yeah.
So that needs to be protected. But you also have to balance that with, there are businesses that are bringing jobs into that region, and you can't overregulate things so much that you stifle business. So there needs to be a balance, and that's what I'll seek to bring. I have no problem sitting down with people from both sides and making sure that there are common sense approaches to anything that's put forward. I know the Everglades has received funding on the federal level for preservation restoration. I know that the Army Corps of Engineers is very heavily involved with a lot of projects in these areas. That's what I look forward to working on when I'm elected.
Do you have something, or must I?
You go.
Okay, the heat is starting to get to me just a little bit, so I kind of forgot everything I was ever going to say.
It's a warm day.
Yeah, no, it is. So, again, with this being such a unique district, we also, how was I actually going to put that? Give me just a moment. I'm going to have to make a cut here.
You guys are so awesome to do this.
Trying.
I know it's hot
Thank
out.
you for being here.
Yeah.
It's really a special moment.
Thank you for taking time out of your day.
You got
we
it.
appreciate it. Okay. I'll pretend I didn't even ask anything, so go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, Terri, once you get elected, what are some pieces of legislation and things that you just really want to jump into and get your hands dirty working on?
Great question. Government reform is something that I'm very passionate about. So obviously that's something that I'm going to look at what we can do to start increasing DOGE and doing more of it, because that's been a very important thing. Affordability directly ties to that. If you're cutting government spending and you're looking for ways to cut out waste, fraud, and abuse, that is a perfect way to save the taxpayers money. I signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge. I'm very firmly committed to that. One other thing that I'm very passionate about, we have the Buy American Act and other things that are geared towards having American products be what are purchased in government contracting. However, there are a lot of ways that gets circumvented, unfortunately. There's actually a company in New York called Sherrill Manufacturing. They manufacture silverware, and it's all made here in the United States. Phenomenal company. But I've been talking with some of the folks that are part of that company, and they told me that you would think that, they would just be selling their products to everybody that is buying off of a government contract. That's not the case. Unfortunately, there are manufacturers in China that ship their product here to the United States. There's American companies that then take that product and rebuff it and sell it as if it's American made.
Interesting.
So what I want to do is introduce legislation that ensures that every part of the supply chain that is possible to be made here in the United States is all completely manufactured here. If there's obviously something that has to be purchased outside the U.S., then that we would seek a U.S. ally first and foremost to purchase it from over some country that is not an ally. So that is something I'm very passionate about. I read a book called China RX. That'll keep you up at night if you read that, because it talks about how all of our prescription drugs, things that we are absolutely reliant upon for life and death, are being manufactured in China. And this is a country that, is not our friend, and yet we are so dependent on them for so many things like that. So that has to change. We need to shift more to being manufactured right here in the United States, and I want to fight to push for that.
I like it. I see that.
I do. That's been something that's been on my mind for quite a while, is about the Chinese pharmaceuticals. And no matter if that label of Made in America is honored or not, we don't actually know how much we can trust
That's
the
right.
whole process is American. But another question. So as mid-20-somethings in Naples, Florida, you mentioned affordability earlier. Things are very quickly getting less and less affordable as time goes on. Gas at the time of recording is $3.99 a gallon at the local racetrack, and housing costs are just going up and up. Energy costs are going up and up. What are practical steps that you have an idea for when it comes to affordability, not just on a Floridian scale, but on a national scale?
Well, cutting taxes is first and foremost one thing that I love. That's something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah.
Grover Norquist with the Americans for Tax Reform is a friend. As I mentioned, I signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge. So you start there, then you look for ways to cut out waste, fraud, and abuse. I'm a fiscal conservative, and I'm in favor of limited government. I'm a constitutional conservative. So I believe in less government. And if you start looking for ways to trim things down, we've had a lot of bloat. Let's just put it that way.
Exactly.
There's a lot of things that we can do to put more of your money in your own pocket at the end of the day, and that's what I want to fight for.
Is there any specifics on where some of that bloat is coming from? How are we able to differentiate? Because I know that there were some problems in the very beginning of the most recent administration with cutting some things that weren't necessary, looked like waste, fraud, and abuse on the outside, but
Right.
when you got down to brass tacks, it's like, oh, that's like cancer research and
Right,
stuff like that.
right.
So then, without touching stuff like Social Security, so when it comes to affordability, not just on a Floridian or a national scale, what do we actually able to get down to brass tacks? What goes, what stays?
So you never want to cut so close to the bone that you throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Of course.
And I agree that there are things that you need to be careful and examine. But cutting out, looking for ways to cut fraud. There is a lot of fraud still happening with things like Medicare,
Well, you
Medicaid.
wouldn't think it cost $50,000 for a hammer now, would you? So.
Well, there's ways that you can increase the ability to make sure that what's being funded is transparent, accounted for, increasing the ability to examine spending. I mean, there's a lot of spending that we can't account for at the end of the day. And so looking for greater accountability is something that I want to push for first and foremost.
Yeah. So speaking of accountability, I know a issue that because I have kind of become the person in my friend group, at least, that people look to. It's like, Ryan, who are we voting for? I'm like, okay, let me figure it out. Let me talk to some people. One of the issues that comes up often is people like Nancy Pelosi are absolutely lined their pockets while in Congress and working in the legislature due to alleged insider trading. I have to say alleged because this will have more eyes on it than most of our times where I might have said otherwise. But I've never said it publicly for sure. But when it comes to members of Congress being able to trade stocks, where's your stance on that?
Absolutely needs to be tightened down. This is a major concern. I know a lot of people have talked to me about this. When I declared that I was running for Congress, I had to sign a form that was put forward by the Florida Secretary of State's office, and one of the questions that I was so thrilled to see on there was, will you commit to not doing insider trading? And I checked the box. Yes,
I will not break the law.
Right.
Making the laws.
Yeah, exactly.
Believe it or not, no. For a lot of people.
There's a lot of members of Congress that have, for far too long, been exploiting that system, and it's just wrong. And I realize that, it's very hard sometimes to push for change when the very body that is making the change is being affected by it. But as much as I am able as a freshman member of Congress to push for that, I am going to do it.
Right. So then on top of that as well, another issue that leads questions like that of the it's like, well, we can't do anything about insider trading in Congress because Congress votes on it. Another thing that's very difficult on that end is term limits when it comes to Congress. Where do you stand when it comes to congressional term limits?
So I am not in favor of career politicians. I don't think that Congress should be a retirement home. I think we've got far too many people kind of hobbling around in the hallways
Especially
who look like...
if you take a full 2 months off and still get paid.
Right.
So,
With that being said, though, we have term limits in this country. They're called the ballot box.
Right.
And what you don't want to do is push for term limits and have people self-term limit without really even understanding the process, because it takes years sometimes to build up seniority on Capitol Hill and to be able to be in a role where you can then be a chair of a committee to bring resources home to your district. Or you look at Chris Smith, who's one of the greatest champions for the pro-life movement that we've ever had on Capitol Hill. If he had been term limited, we would have lost one of the strongest allies for the pro-life cause that we have. So you have to be careful you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I am not in favor of people who are basically long past their effectiveness abilities, staying in office just because they have name ID.
Yeah. What do you think is the way to combat that if it weren't about term limits? Because I think we kind of have an epidemic of uninformed voters. Who I'm just going to say on both sides of the aisle, looking at the Nancy Pelosi's and Mitch McConnell's of the world, who have been there their entire lives, and now not. Again, I'm trying to remain as apolitical as possible, but if we look at those two individuals and many others like them about how do we prevent something like that from happening when we have people just going, it's like, I've heard that name, and hitting check.
Right. Ryan, I think you used the two words that are the most important words in this entire conversation. Uninformed voters.
Yeah.
That is a cancer in our country. And when you have voters that are not doing their homework, you wind up with people like Nancy Pelosi in office, which is why we have a 10% approval rating in Congress right now.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have said from the beginning of this campaign is, please treat this like a job interview. A lot of people treat voting like ordering food off of a fast food menu. But what they really need to be doing is treating it more like a job interview. You're not ordering dinner.
Yeah.
You are selecting a representative who's going to represent nearly 800,000 people in Congress. That is a huge job with massive responsibilities.
Yeah.
And I'm not
It's not
here
a
because I
popularity
just want a
contest.
title. I'm here because I'm trained and I'm seasoned and I know how to get the job done and I want to serve this district. That's what sets me apart from my opponents. I'm not just trying to get a title.
I like that.
That's very powerful. That was a very
That's a
to
clip.
the point
Clip that.
statement.
It's from the heart. It's the truth.
It
You
is,
know?
and we appreciate you telling us the truth.
Yeah.
Because I mean, a lot of time I feel like people vote and then they're like, wait, how did I get this person? And
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
they haven't even paid attention to anything that happened beforehand.
Well, if you went into a restaurant and you sat down and didn't even look at the menu, and then the waitress popped down something that was the most disgusting looking dish, you'd be
Yeah.
like, I didn't order this. Well, yeah, you did, because you weren't here when we were looking at the menu. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
same thing. Nobody
You
wants
think
nasty
strawberry
food.
pancake surprise would actually be liver and onions when you get it to the table.
Exactly.
It's not about a name.
That's
Yeah.
right. We don't want liver and onions.
So, let's see. What do you think is your number one issue that you're going to Congress for?
First and foremost, government reform,
Mm-hmm.
and I think campaign reform needs to be put on that list too, because the way that we have allowed the rise of super PACs, which basically allow for unlimited donations, and then you just start having this spending cycle that gets higher and higher every time.
Yeah.
The cost of getting elected now is just running out of control. It's a new growth industry for political consultants, and yet the average voter doesn't really even understand that a lot of times, and there's a lot of things that are being done to basically buy these races, and I think we're moving farther and farther away from what the Founding Fathers intended and what the people really want it to be, which is electing someone who is going to care about them and who's going to have their needs first and foremost on their minds when they go up to Washington.
Exactly.
And if you just buy something and you're like, well, I bought it, so I own it, then do you have that same commitment?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think you do.
Yeah, I looking at even this year's elections, I mean, they were bought and paid for by PACs, foreign influences, and AI-generated advertisements that were complete lies. So one thing I do very much like about your campaign is I have not seen an iota of mudslinging, and this has been. Especially on the for Florida for the governorship race. That doesn't mean I still don't want you on the podcast. It still remains open. If you're watching, Mr. James, because you already said yes, so you better come on. Anyway, but I was going to turn that into a question, and I don't know how.
I have
going to.
a
Maybe
couple.
you can. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So earlier you had mentioned some Christian values. How do you think that sets you into a different ballpark or realm to really get things done, or how does that affect some of your decision making?
I appreciate that question. This country was founded on Judeo-Christian values, and it is something that my faith has always guided every part of what I do. I pray about my decisions. I prayed about getting in this race. I felt like the number one thing that had to come in line for me was feeling like I was hearing from the big boss, and then now I'm asking for the voters' support. But as a Christian, as somebody who cares about the values that basically are what make America great, having family values and keeping us in line with what one of our founding fathers said, which was, basically this is founded in a way that it's set up for moral people, for people who are people that have that moral compass. If you take the moral compass out, which that moral compass is tied to biblical values a lot of times, then what will you have? So for me, it impacts everything that I do. I care so much about getting more Christians involved in politics. I literally wrote a book about it. The reason I targeted Christians in particular was because 79% of Americans identify as Christian, and yet half of them don't vote. And 15 million Christians are not even registered to vote at all.
Wow.
And I named my book Running into the Fire. And I named it that because I was talking to a friend of mine who had also run for office about the same time I did. He is also Christian. And I said, why do you believe Christians shy away from being involved in politics? He said, because they're afraid of it. they think of it as being dirty and corrupt. And I said, yes, that's what I hear over and over. He said, but what they really should be doing is thinking of it more like people who are in law enforcement or people who are firefighters,
Exactly.
because they're trained to overcome their fears. And instead of running away from the burning building, they run right into it. And I was like, that's it. We're losing our country. We have relegated politics over to this extreme side and said, oh, that's dirty. I don't want to be in the middle of it. Well, guess what? If you're not the one filling that void, somebody else will, and they may not share your values, and they may not care about you as their constituents. And just because you're not called to be in office doesn't mean that you get a pass. You have to support those who are willing to step up and put themselves in the ring and fight. But you can't fight if you're just a party of one. You have to have reinforcements.
I am going to continue on this train, but still moving a little bit away from actual election issues. What denomination would you consider yourself as?
I grew up Baptist, and I've gone to non-denominational churches, but I go to a Baptist church, Family Church.
Okay. Is Family Church here? Where's
no, over
okay.
over on the
I was going to
side.
say, it's like you're not from here specifically.
But I spend so much time here, I could probably qualify.
Yeah. Well, you're invited to Faith Life Church Sunday mornings at 10
Thank you
a.m.
very
if you'd ever
much.
like to come.
I would love to visit.
But we'll be at the FSW campus this Sunday. Flower almost landed in my hair as well. But did you grow up a Christian, or did you get saved later in life?
Believe it or not, my fourth grade school teacher is the one who first shared Christ with me.
Really? Okay.
And she started talking to me about God. I then asked to go to a Christian school in 10th grade because on the little application it said, why do you want to come to Trinity School? And I said, because I want to learn how to be a Christian. So it was kind of a faith journey for me, but I became a Christian when I was in high school, and I've never forgotten those Christian values. And God it's not just a belief system, it's a relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So you would, of course, consider yourself Christian first before politician.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I answer to a higher authority than just the voters.
So then what would you do if there was something that the party at large more so was like, I think we should be pushing for this type of legislation? If it interfered with your Christian values, where would you stand?
I'll put it this way. A lot of being in politics is about making difficult choices. And one of the hardest things can be when you are being backed into a corner. But you have to have a backbone. You have to stand up for what you believe in. You have to have a line. Now, there's some things that, and I've talked to a lot of friends who are congressional wives or members of Congress themselves, and I've asked them this very same question. But for me, it comes down to I have core values that I just will not cross the line on. I mean, I'm very pro-life. I'm very pro-Second Amendment. I'm committed to the Constitution. I'm committed to my Christian values and my faith. I'm committed to the fact that we have a country that was founded on that, and it needs to stay that.
Exactly, yeah.
And I'm not going to cross those lines.
Right.
If there's small things that you have to compromise on sometimes to get a bill through, a lot of people will do that, and that has to be a choice that you pray through every time. But for certain core aspects, then there's like a very firm line in the sand, and I will not bend.
Is there an example of maybe a recent policy decision that has been made in Congress that the overwhelming majority of Republicans voted for that you would have been against?
Well, there was one thing in particular that I was very concerned about that I was glad to hear got stripped out. There were, a lot of things that were being rolled into the One Big Beautiful Bill, and some of them regarding AI regulation. Yeah. And I know kind of some of the behind the scenes of how that got taken out. And I'll just tell you, one of the things I'm very concerned about right now is the fact that, like, you have Grok that is being used for generating pornographic images. You can take a photo of somebody that's a high school graduation photo and scan it in, and it now will create a pornographic image. That's just wrong. Stuff like that, that needs to be stopped, and I would not want to see something that goes forward that would allow something like that to continue, because that hurts innocent people.
Yeah. Exactly.
So Terry, if you could describe your campaign in about 5 words or phrases, how would you describe yourself to somebody that would be voting?
Christian, America first. I guess that's 2 words.
That's a phrase.
Constitutional conservative. That would be 5. If I got a couple extra, I would say hates socialism, passionately pro-life.
Perfect.
There we go. I think we can ask a couple of rapid-fire questions to get to know you a little bit better as a person. Because
Sure.
I feel
Yeah.
like we do a lot on this podcast.
We'll
about
actually make
trying
them
to-
rapid this time.
Yeah, we'll do our best. We'll do our
Yes.
best. The intro there. So we don't want to strictly be. It's like, well, this about because a newspaper can do everything that we just did. Coffee or tea?
T.
If you could sit with any figure of notability, past or present, who would you choose to have lunch with?
Margaret Thatcher.
Margaret Thatcher. Really? Why?
Iron Lady. She was fascinating, amazing, and she stood passionately against communism and socialism, but she, was a balance of, iron fist, velvet glove.
All right. I usually ask this question as beach or mountains, but I'm gonna throw a little curveball on you. Beach day or day out in the Everglades?
Beach day.
Yeah.
Not that I don't love the Everglades.
Yeah.
You need a lot of bug spray for the
Oh,
Everglades.
yeah. I damn near got carried away. So
Oh no.
I know those are the ones that we always do, so it gets a little bit more difficult when we have to be a little bit creative.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue.
You picked a great
Never
table.
seen Yeah. What is your favorite restaurant?
Oh goodness, that one's tricky. Probably a little cafe in Paris. But if you can't have that, I would say good home cooking, southern country kind of cooking.
Yeah.
Barbecue.
I like it. Okay, you chose beach day. Would you rather have a West Coast beach day or an East Coast beach day?
Of Florida?
Of
or-
Florida.
okay.
Of Florida.
Oh, man, you're putting me on the spot. They're
'Cause
both beautiful.
They're both so different, so it's really hard.
guess
But
so
Really down to,
different,
would
but-
you rather get up to watch the sunrise or would you rather watch the sunset?
Well, I'm
on the
pretty
water.
particular in
That's-
Marco Island. I mean, I got to say, Marco has some of the most spectacular sunrises and sunsets on the planet. So I'd have to say Marco.
All right. What would you have for your last meal? If you were given the opportunity to know exactly, and it's like, what is... I've been watching another podcast of that name, Last Meals, a lot recently, so it's just been on my mind. What's your last meal?
Chocolate.
Just chocolate?
Probably just chocolate.
How much cacao are we doing?
Maybe-
Was this dark
maybe-
chocolate, milk chocolate, chocolate
Maybe
milk?
a really well-cooked steak and then some chocolate. How about that?
Well
Ooh.
cooked, as in well done?
Like
or
seasoned well, beautifully prepared.
How do you take your
cooked in
steak?
butter, medium well.
medium well. Okay, that's I can get down with that.
Okay.
I'm medium rare, but
Okay.
I can get down with that.
Okay.
You're not going to lose any votes over medium well.
Okay.
So. You're looking at
Do
me
we wanna
again.
keep going?
We could if we really wanted
just-
to, but we've got.
it's
like,
up to her. I
yeah.
don't want to
I
accidentally
don't
keep you way
need-
too long.
We don't need to keep you over.
Because we
time,
also
and
do an
got water
outro.
running.
So
Yes,
so,
now we have water.
yeah.
I think we're pretty good. Maybe
Yeah.
one more minute if you
Is
got
there-
one last question.
If you were to look into your camera, well, you know what? Before that, I'm going to make sure.
Make
it's
sure
still
it's on.
recording.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
We're gonna have to divert to the wide a lot.
Okay. No worries.
If you were to look into your camera over there and give just why you think people should vote for you August 18th, and then if you do win the primary, why they should vote for you in November.
Because I am committed to preserving the freedom that this country has and that this state has. Because I am a candidate who is highly trained. I'm seasoned. I understand how to get things done in D.C. And because I have no baggage. Because I can clear the hurdles and get through the primary and the general. And that's a very important thing. There's very little that you could ever throw at me. You'd have to make it up. So, picking a candidate needs to really be on merit, and that's something that I care deeply about. I'm qualified for this job. I have spent years learning the processes in Washington, D.C., and I want to put that to work for the hardworking families here in this district and for the people who are like our seniors and our retirees and people who want to make sure that there's somebody who cares about their needs. And because I know what a best practice congressional office looks like and how to make sure that constituent services are being done in a way that really serves a district well. Exactly. That's what makes me not only a candidate who is ready on day one to serve, but who will be there and faithful to this district when I'm elected.
All right. Well, I look forward to the election and seeing how you fare. And I look
Yes,
forward
best of
to
luck.
Thank you.
The re-interview once it is not a candidate, but it is Congresswoman.
Thank
you. And we'll be reviewing some of the things we talked about here. I'm excited.
Official friend of the podcast.
Official friend of the podcast.
Oh,
You are welcome back at any time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
today.
Thank
Ryan.
you.
Thank you, Jordan. You're wonderful.
And we'll do a little thing outside of here so that she can get going. Thank you, Terri, so much for joining us. We'll do the full thing later.
Yes.
Thank you so much
All
for
of her
watching.
information and our information will be below as
Yes.
well.
Thank you so much for watching. It really does mean the most. And we will see you all in the next one. Bye.
Woohoo!
There.